myself, Jayashree. A very warm welcome to the webinar on Dual Degree Dilemma organized by India Education Forum. As announced in the new education policy, and in order to allow students to acquire multiple skills, the University Grants Commission very recently allowed higher education institutions to offer dual and joint degrees. According to UGC, this helps students to simultaneously pursue two physical UG or PG courses, or a combination with an online or distance learning course simultaneously. The facility, which is available across all courses or combination of courses, is expected to help students to get 2 degrees simultaneously and thus improve their employment opportunities. Will dual degree system benefit students? Such a system helps students to enhance their knowledge and scope of employability. Will it facilitate flexible pathways to learning? To discuss these issues, today we are having with us education sector experts in the platform India Education Forum. Let me introduce our guest, Mr. Shantanu Roos, a familiar face in the EdTech space, founder and CEO of TeamLease EdTech. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Roos, and thank you for agreeing to moderate our webinar.
Thank you so much, Jayashree.
I would also welcome our panelist, Mr. Alexander Jesudasan, Pro Vice Chancellor of Hindustan Institute of Technology and Science, and Dr. Leena Wadia, Member of Drafting Committee of NEP and Senior Fellow at ORF. A very warm welcome to you both.
Thank you.
The floor is yours, Mr. Shantanu.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really appreciate all those kind words, Jayashree. My first question to you, Leena ma'am, and I have been talking to some of your other drafting committee members. Dr. Vasudha Kamath is a very close friend.
Yeah.
So for the information for all our audience, would you like to explain what is this concept of dual degrees and what is the need for doing something like this?
So I have to start by saying that the dual degree as announced by the UGC is not a recommendation of the NEP. Okay, anybody who's read the NEP carefully, both the government's shorter version and the draft NEP 2019 knows that there is a considerable emphasis on multidisciplinary learning, but the dual degree was not an explicit recommendation. That said, what UGC seems to be doing is signaling that it is okay for students to be enrolled in 2 courses at once. I'm not sure that students needed the permission of UGC to do that. I'm not sure that whether the students are barred from, if you are enrolled in a college during the day to take evening classes in another place. I don't think students were barred from that, but this is definitely a signal which says that students can enroll in multiple degrees if they are able to cope with the workload and if they are, if it suits them. So, of course, then it opens out a huge set of ramifications on institutions themselves, on the students themselves, and so on. We'll get into that during the panel, but I just wanted to say that the UGC's attempt is to really signal to students that they can sign up for 2 at a time. That's about it, I think.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wadia. That's helpful. My next question to you, Dr. Jesudasan, is so what is UGC telling students? That one is obviously students cannot go to 2 different campuses at the simultaneously. So I possibly cannot take 2 physical or classroom-based dual degrees, which automatically means that 1 degree has to be classroom-based and the second has to be online, or both online or distance education, something like that. At least I have to mix 2 different flavors or 2 different modes of education to be able to make that useful. What does UGC aim to achieve by doing this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rooj, for this question. The point, we cannot completely rule out that it cannot be done on 2 physical modes, because it all depends upon the proximity of these institutions. If the institutions, the 2 institutions that the person is going to be choosing, maybe one for the, now we are into the shift system. If they're able to do the first program, in shift 1, which might get over by about, 12:30 or so. And then if the institution, the one that they're going to be choosing, is not too far away. Either they could go by a two-wheeler or they could bump into a bus and then go. It is possible for them to, because there is no cap or bar on that. And as you rightly said, they could do probably one in the physical mode, and the other they could do in the distance mode and online mode and things like that, by which I think they can do it. So my thing is that it doesn't restrain from anyone to do two physical modes. It all depends on the timings. I know in some parts of the country, the session, the second shift ends even at 7 p.m. In the evening. So this is just to enable them to take these programs as it is convenient to them, so they are able to cope with that. And I think physical distance should not be a kind of a constraint for someone who would like to do both in the physical mode.
In continuation to that, Dr. Jesudasan, my question to you again is, Dr. Leena talked about the concept of multidisciplinary degrees. So how is a dual degree different from a multidisciplinary degree?
Of course, we all know pretty well that dual is 2 programs, multidisciplinary is many programs. I think it would be like, for example, an institution is multidisciplinary. And I wonder whether a particular person can go beyond dual degree or more than 2 degrees at a point in time. I think time only would say, and the capabilities only would say, whether they could probably pitch on one more or a few more, depending upon the capability of the individual and its availability. So I think multidisciplinary, I think it would restrict to the institution which offers some of these programs, and dual degree at the moment would be restricted to the student who would be considering 2 programs at a given point in time.
Leena ma'am, have you seen any precedents like this anywhere in the world, where students are not only permitted, but there is actually acceptance of dual degrees amongst learners? Have you seen this anywhere in the world happen, or is it unique to India?
So let me step back one more minute and say something which I should have said before, before I forget. The word dual degree is horribly overloaded. Okay, the typical usage of a dual degree is, for example, when a student enrolls for a BTech and an MTech together, do a 5-year program in an institution and graduate with both a BTech and an MTech. What UGC has been careful to say is that you can enroll in 2 programs, which means you can probably do a law and BA together, Bachelor of Law and Bachelor of Arts together. And that's a popular combination. Now, if you ask me about, is this new to India and is this anywhere in the world? I have to say that even before online became an opportunity, there are many students all over the world who were, studying specific skills in evening colleges while they were still studying in university for other degrees. So this is normal. Even in India, it used to happen that I know of students in Mumbai in Government Law College who used to attend college during the day, but then in the evening take other kinds of courses, whether it's languages, whether it is, that may not by itself, those courses may not by itself lead to a separate degree, but people were doing this all the time, that, using their time well to study. So now they have been formally empowered to do that. But after that, I would say that, institutions are very unlikely to, sort of not compete for the fees of the students who want to do 2 degrees at their same institution. So for example, what I said about BA and law, if there is a university offering both on their campus, if they are able to do clever timetabling to allow the students to attend both classes, they could. So I see that in the future, institutions will try to look for popular combinations and try to see if they can provide it themselves. But as you said, one online and one, in physically is likely to be the most popular combination going forward.
I'm more confused now, ma'am. Just trying to understand that,
yeah.
What is it that, okay, let me reframe my question in that case. What is it that dual degrees will achieve, which a multidisciplinary degree could not have achieved?
So when the NEP talks about multidisciplinary, it did say that it was talking about in the context of the 4-year undergraduate program, where India's education system is extremely siloed. If you take physics, if you want mathematics and physics, then you have to take chemistry. You cannot get it with anything else, or you have to get it with electronics. There were very, very sort of hardcore combinations that were offered to students. And the first step to multidisciplinary education is to actually lift those boundaries, those things that are available. But Dr. Kasturirangan, in one of his NEPA Foundation lectures, has explained very, very beautifully about what it means to do interdisciplinary studies and multidisciplinary studies and so on, that to draw from sciences, social sciences, and humanities to form a worldview that is that for himself was came in very handy in his career all the time. So I would urge people who are listening to look for his NEPA lecture, 15th Foundation Day lecture, and read it. It's worth reading, actually.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Dr. Jesudasan.
In fact, Mr. Roj, I would like to just add a couple of points, if you permit me to do so. I think the idea of, as Madam said, Madam Wadia, I think it is for the flexibility that is required. I think earlier we used to have very rigid, kind of a pathway or a roadmap, where if someone is going to be doing, humanities, have to necessarily only go in that line forever, for life, and so also for sciences. I think this has to be broken, and this we have seen very much happening. I think in the Western world, because I myself have had interactions where I found someone who was probably would do 1 degree to satisfy the parents, and the second one to satisfy oneself. All these various combinations have been there, and therefore I think this multidisciplinary approach, to have a good understanding of not only their own core subject, but then the allied ones, which will be skill-based, and probably an addition in languages and things like that, that would probably make a person wholesome. I think that is what is the ultimatum, not to be, narrowed down to a particular discipline, but to have a wholesome, holistic approach to an individual's development, because that is the call of the day. I think the NEP is focusing, on that overall all-round development. And to just add to what Madam has said with regard to whether it is available in other countries, yes, of course, in US, in UK, to name in Japan, you've got this dual degree concept going on quite well in good universities like, the University of Michigan, Yale University, University of California, New York University in Japan, and University of Michigan. And all these, have experimented with the dual degree combination with a wide range, in both ways, both within a particular niche, and also to keep the scope wide open. I think all these have been experimented, and that has led to production of good quality, wholesome persons. Thank you.
That's so well said. Thank you so much for that. Lina ma'am, coming back to you again then.
Mm-hmm.
So as an industry observer myself, we have been saying that the signaling value of a degree in India has been diminishing with times. Degrees are not the same anymore. What used to happen during my grandfather's time is not happening during my daughter's time, for sure. Mm-hmm. In India, at least, globally, we are aware that more than 60% of the taxi drivers in US are graduates today, right? 31% of the retail checkout clerks in the US are graduates today. And even in India, at least about 10% of the top-end security guards are graduates today. The signaling value of a degree is not the same anymore. Degrees in India haven't signaled employability. In that case, how does adding 2 degrees helping the student? Does it mean double unemployability? How does it help?
So, it's true that degrees in India have become, have lost some of their value, because the focus has shifted away from learning by doing to actually, just taking classes dictated by the exams. So the assessment modes actually sort of have a cascading effect on how students learn and how they are taught and so on. So it's the pedagogy and the assessment that has sort of contributed to the fact that, degrees don't have as much value anymore. But in India, a bachelor's degree is a prized possession. I mean, people want it to signal that they are a graduate. I mean, it matters in the marriage market, it matters in many places. So it's unfortunate that the value given to the student is not as high as it could be. And the NEP is trying to change that by bringing the focus back into learning by bringing the focus back into, learning, focus on critical thinking, development of critical thinking and competencies like critical thinking and problem solving and communication skills and ability to work in teams and development of personality skills like empathy and, the ability to rise from failure. These are the things that add value. And Dr. Jesudasan said about how students in many countries have been doing dual degrees and or double two programs. And that is for a very good reason, because each program makes sure that the student is engaged and learns something at the end of it, So it is then the responsibility of the student who signs up for two programs to make sure that he or she does justice to both, right? So, but every program of a university, the faculty members and the management will make sure that the student is engaged in class, there is homework after class, and there is learning, So if that's the situation, then the onus is on the student who's choosing 2 degrees to put in twice as much effort. I mean, there are 24 hours in a day, but people do it. They do it. Some are because they are fast learners, some because they are very motivated, and all kinds of reasons like that. Yeah. But the key thing in India is this lack of commitment to quality of learning of the students signed for any particular program.
I agree with you completely, ma'am. And Dr. Jesudasan, some time back, I was just reading this fantastic book by Dr. Pankaj Chandra from Ahmedabad University called The Building Universities That Matter. Mm-hmm. And there he wrote that there are 3 different purposes of education. One, to ensure that we have great citizens in the country. Second was to fulfill one's quest of knowledge. And the third one, to ensure that you go ahead and make a career for yourself and make a living for yourself as part of education. I'm not too sure how education in India has delivered on the first or the second, but on the third one, for sure, employers do not agree that the education system in India produces the type of skilled manpower that can fulfill the open position that they're to offer. Do you think this concept of dual degrees will fill up some of these gaps that the employers are observing?
Yes, I think certainly that is one of the reasons, I think, for us to probably offer the dual degree program, because on one hand, you could whether it's going to be engineering or whether it is going to be any other undergraduate program, they could probably do that. But the most important aspect is the skill development and the nuances that are required to probably strengthen the main program. So for which I think you not only need to go into probably the conventional universities or colleges, but you can also think of community colleges. I think abroad you have, that the skill, is being honed so well. So the students here can definitely, can go in for any one of their choices, so that what they study as the core could be firmed up by what they're going to be acquiring, either through a dual degree or it could be a diploma also. All that is that in a day, the person should be occupied in probably engaging in 2 different types of programs. Now, I would say that it is already this concept of equipping oneself has already started bearing fruits in our country, for the simple reason that we have so many startups. The startups that has come up in diverse areas of living is so much that all these are being picked up by our young graduates who came up from some of the primary institutions, who are able to combine. It is not just the monopoly of one domain, but then in a combination of either managerial skills or skill development and things like that, which have made this pact together for someone to be successful. So I'm very sure that this aspect of having a dual program, as I said, it need not be always a degree. It could be a diploma, it could be a certificate alongside the main, that would definitely enable a student to really shape well and pursue the career and to probably reach a destination, that they have dreamt of some time back.
Yeah, and so what I'm hearing from you, Dr. Jesudasan, you have been using few terms very, very frequently. You talked about academic knowledge and you talked about skill building many times. And to me, the way it appears is in your mind, the students must select these courses properly to ensure that there is adequate amount of academic knowledge being gathered, as well as there's a skill building being there. There's complementarity to the way the courses are being selected. That's the way the student must go about doing this. My next question to you, Neela ma'am, is who is it more suitable for? Should every student go for 2 degrees, or is it only suitable for a category of students who should go for these type of courses, ma'am? What do you suggest?
So, we cannot forget the fact that education is expensive, you know, and so therefore, not everyone even has the option to pay for 2 degrees, leave alone, 1 degree, leave alone 2, right? So, so economics will actually sort of determine who has these options, first of all, their edtech education, online education and open and distance education can actually come in because it can be delivered at lower price points. So you could learn, and like Dr. Jeshudasan said, that it's, you need skills of various kinds and which have not yet been integrated into university education. But I would say that over time, if universities get the message of the NEP well and do a good job of one undergraduate, 4-year undergraduate program, which is multidisciplinary and very well focused on learning outcomes, the student doesn't need a second degree, Then he or she may sign up for an IT course because they want to learn, to make an app because they want to do something with that app. Those are different things, actually. They are specific tooling and skills that students will keep learning all the time because, we also have everyone knows this and everyone has talked about it, but the Indian education system didn't do anything about it, which is the fact that, we have a left brain and a right brain. We have a logical side and a creative side, and, music and mathematics is such a common thing. So you need to satisfy the interests of the students. And if a good undergraduate program comes that actually delivers on this, then the second program is not necessary, except in situations where you are, like he said, may go to acquire some specific skills that you need for whatever future plan that you have. So very often people will also go for, finance and accounting type of courses because they want to start something themselves and want to learn it. So it depends on specific circumstances.
So in that case, ma'am, once the NEP becomes a full-fledged reality, when universities actually implement NEP the way it's envisioned, when we start having this stackability of credentialing, when we have multiple entry and exits and multiple choices courses to pick up from, then the context of dual degrees will diminish.
So I like the fact that UGC has actually enabled it because it's another item of choice, But will it be something that every student does? Very unlikely. Very small. I would say that it's a very small percentage of students that will look for something like that, And that also, it will take time for the education system to rise to the challenge of offering, this dual option, if you're not dual option, but 2 program option in a way that it works for students, So this will also take time
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, ma'am. I'm going to come back to you with another question very soon, just tailing into the. Before that, I have a question for Dr. Jesudasan here.
Yes, go ahead.
We have spoken about the various opportunities and options for the kids now that this new guideline opens up for. What do you think are the challenges that students are going to face when they enroll for 2 different degrees?
Yeah, I think just before that, just to supplement, how one could be guided to choose or not a second one, I think largely depends upon the mentoring that has to be done. I think now, I think you know pretty well, the teacher's job is not just to go occupy the class for 1 hour and come back, but then it largely depends upon guiding and mentoring the students. I think that has become a part and parcel. So the mentor should be able to guide the mentee as to what would be the right kind of a combination. Whether they could manage on a single degree or dual, and what is the thing that they have to choose. I think is something that the mentoring system should be able to strengthen. Now, the opportunity to answer to the question that you've asked about, the challenges. Yes, for example, if the person has chosen the second one, the person should probably be very confident and also should be able to decide very clearly whether the person would be able to complete the program. So the thing is that one having started, it is not advisable for someone to drop in either in the main program or in the second program. And some of the challenges that would probably appear in the educational, from the education institution point of view, is scheduling of classes, scheduling of examinations, and things like, even when you take, for example, the admission, when someone gets admitted into a single program, they have to come with the transfer certificate, conduct certificate. So if they're going to be submitting it to one institution, what will they submit to the other institution? So, of course, we have the academic bank of credit and things like that. So that needs to be, the guideline has to be clearly given to the institution as to how they would be able to facilitate admission and further going on with these programs, in the respective education institution. So these are some of the challenges that would come the way. Otherwise, as you know, the person chooses the second program consciously, and not out of compulsion. Someone is not going to be forced, and as you rightly said, it is again going to be the cost factor and things like that. So one should judiciously and genuinely be committed to these programs, and both the institution as well as the student should be able to travel together smoothly. And I think we will have to see, I think after probably 3 years or 5 years, as to how we have performed in terms of offering the dual degree program. That is going to be, the watch time that we would have as to how we have really done, and how to really navigate further with the appropriate tweaking in the system.
Thank you so much. That's really interesting. Coming back to you, Dina ma'am. So some of my journalist friends tells me that there are so many problems which are actually staring the face of regulators and policymakers when it comes to higher education in the country. Be it learning outcomes, be it dropout rates, be it employability, be it financing of higher education. All of these things are glaring problems on the face of higher education and regulators and policymakers. In those times when we focus on something like a dual degree, are we pressing the wrong buttons, or are we doing high wash? Where are the policymakers' focuses are?
So I would say that this is a well-posed question. I think it's an important question to ask, but I think we should see the UGC's attempt as an enablement attempt, and certainly it's not meant for everybody to do. I mean, as and when institutions are able to offer these options, as and when students find options that work for them, the two options that they are interested and that they are able to do because the timetabling and stuff all works out, it will slowly take up. So, it's just one more piece of enablement. UGC has been doing a series of things as after NEP came out, like it brought out the Academic Bank of Credits was the first thing to come. And then there is the National Academic Depository, and then there are many other regulations that UGC has taken up. I'm hearing that the National Higher Education Qualification Framework, the draft version was made available, and it's probably all ready because classes have to start in July. And then, the integration with skills, that's happening. Then they have given a sort of a draft 4-year undergraduate program guidelines. And so they've been doing many things to try to sort of provide more choice to the students. But I agree with you that we have done little after NEP release to hit the core of the problem, which is a focus on the quality of teaching and learning, so that each student who comes out becomes employable. That's something else that you've been talking. There's an underlying thread that we are relating everything to employability, and that's important in a country like India, where a young person finding a job steadies a whole family. So yes, employability is what parents are looking for. Educationists will say, oh, you must be educated for its own sake, but actually most parents would not agree. They want employability. So the one thing that has been neglected in this quest for employability throughout is the focus on competencies and skills. And so if we change our focus towards that, then I think whether people do one program or two, that will be a matter of their interest, but irrespective of which program they do, they will be more employable. And that would be a happy outcome, I think.
I'll come back to you, the follow-up question there.
Yeah.
I'm just taking my notes on that. Coming back to you, Dr. Jesudasan, whereas these are all good things to talk about, but looking at it from your eyes, when you head an organization, institution, be it a university or a college, there are multiple problems staring at your face now. One, the concept of a multidisciplinary degree, where the students could have selected a course in music and art along with engineering degree, for example. The concept of the fact that students could go to any other college and do a couple of courses and bring those credits to your institution. You could go to SWAYAM and earn credits and bring to your institution, and then comes your dual degrees too. What are the challenges that institutions are going to face while implementing all of these things?
Yeah, that's a very nice, pertinent question. I think before that, I would like to just touch upon, in fact, I remember listening to some lectures. They used to say, some years ago, in India, there is no question of unemployment. The problem is that we are not able to produce employable graduates. I think that is what is most important. So we need to, any discipline you take, I think the employability is a crux of the matter, and they should be transformed to a state where they are able to be, employable. That's one thing which I wanted to say. Now, the point that you said, that if someone is going to be taking, a few courses or a few programs, the next program from another institution, how it is going to be. See, the credit mapping and the administrative, aspects, the quantum, the content that they are going to be taking in, whether it is all, perfect, who is to be deciding? That's again something that is a very big question. Who will decide whether it is institution A or institution B? So there is likely to be a kind of I cannot use the word rift, kind of complex situation where initially I think there should be some hiccup on these things, because which institution will decide that this quantum is sufficient to provide the degree? I think that is going to be a very pertinent and important challenge that will be there. So there would be some kind of restlessness on these aspects. I think once these are being sorted out, then one would be able to probably have a kind of a defined thinking that this should be sufficient for us to provide a degree and things like that. So it will run through certain, I would say, kind of a troubled waters to begin with. Then after which I think it will definitely get settled down in the days to come.
But in the context of Indian universities and colleges, Dr. Jesudasan, where the penetration of digitalization is quite minimal as of now. Right? So I'm aware of at least so many hundreds and hundreds of universities who are not digitized at all. How do you manage all of this complexity? In the earlier stage, when you have 50 students sitting in a classroom, all of them doing the same program, same curriculum, timetable managing was still easier. With all of this complexity coming in, without a digital intervention in entire stuff, how do you manage all of these complexity? This is going to be a humongous task.
Definitely, I would certainly agree to it. Digitization is something very important for us to pull in, all of this information in a single platform and do it. And now there are two important issues. I think, we are all aware of this ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, which normal integration bring in, but that again, I think has not got stabilized in many of the institutions. The integration of many entities is still a problem. Even ERP has in fact become a problem. That is how I think institutions are doing it. And this pertains to institutions that are there probably in the cities or in the suburban areas where they could afford to have all of these facilities. But then moving on to the rural institutions, I think that is going to be a challenge. Of course, I'm aware of the fact that governments are going to be spending a lot of money in modernizing government colleges. I think the state of Tamil Nadu has come up with very big proposals, and I'm sure that these facilities would be made available to the rural areas. But then we need to have proper technology-driven people to amalgamate all of these things. There's no point in having good facilities, but there should be adequate people who would be able to handle, this volume of data, pulling in, transferring, and things like that. So I think there is, again, as we talk about the dual degree program, I think we need to have people who will be conversant with all these, because a conventional degree will not be able to provide a suitable knowledge or adequate knowledge on these aspects of integration of digitized information. So I think people, appropriate disciplines like commerce and other related areas should be able to be adding up the knowledge on these aspects of digitized or integration of digitized information, so that that would be probably a gateway of opening up an opportunity for such disciplines. And they in turn probably could help, in the state or in the center in collating this information and enabling transfer of information, so that this large volume of data that you have of the students who would like to probably move about, I think is facilitated.
Agree with you, sir. Thank you so much for that. Coming back to Leena, ma'am. Now, India has, some of this published report says that India's current GER is close to about 26-27%, aimed to go about 50%. We, in one of our research reports in Team DZTech, we looked at some of this data, and we saw that if I look at class 10th students, this number of kids who are appearing in class, there's about close to about 25 million kids appear class 10th across different boards in the country. By the time this entire cohort reaches college, it becomes 10 million. About a crore kid gets into higher education. There's a 60% drop off in this 2 years' time between class 10th and college. Obviously, the reason GER is low could be a supply problem or could be a demand problem, right? Supply problem, which I mean is that there is not adequate number of institutions in this university, which doesn't look to be true. And second is, even if I have colleges, institutions offering courses, there are not too many takers for this course because students do not see the right type of return of investment for themselves in terms of time and money. How do you think this concept of dual degree is helping solve some of these problems?
I don't think dual degree will solve any of these problems. So, what you said about the profile of the institutions in India is very important for anybody interested in education to know. And I've forgotten all the numbers. I used to have it on my fingertips when I was writing the policy, but something like 40% of the colleges in the country, 40,000 plus colleges in the country are teaching one discipline, so many of them are B.Ed colleges, and that explains, partly why the teacher education, teacher initial preparation was so poor, or you have only commerce, or you have only, so, for these colleges, offering options in humanities or science is not even an option, right? Because they are only single discipline colleges, single program colleges, right? So at the time that we were writing the policy, the thinking was that maybe colleges can come together and sort of pool resources. Like, for example, if you take Mumbai city, in South Mumbai, there are several colleges which are walking distance from each other. So could they share kind of, So this were some of the things that were behind our minds. And the thinking roughly was that institutions will form institutional arrangements among themselves to make it easier for their students to access each other's courses. So it would be a sort of grouping. I mean, it's not necessarily cluster university, clusters also enabled, but, sort of grouping to share teachers, share courses so that students get a bigger choice, But I have to share this with you. Some time ago, I met a vice chancellor of a state university, which is quite famous. And he said that we have no intention of joining the academic bank of credits. And I said, why? And he said, we are surrounded by so many poor quality private colleges, and they are going to tell their students that, do these courses with us and go and get the balance of 50% or more of your credits from the university, So he says that he thinks that by this process, you are actually giving a crutch to bad institutions to continue living, because the students will get a halfway decent education for 50% of their credits from the state university. And it was something that struck me so hard and stayed with me. I'm still thinking about it, that policy has unintended consequences, and these are some of them actually. But to be fair to the policy, we had really thought of institutional arrangements to empower students. And not really, sort of a completely open thing where a student goes shopping for credits, where then nobody is guaranteeing, like Professor Dr. Jesudasan said, that is this credit of value or not. But, if you're lucky and you get more or less at least half of your credits from good institutions, you're okay, So
that makes so much sense. I understand. And you brought a very interesting concept of collaboration between institutions today.
Right.
And Dr. Jesudasan, I'd like to understand from your perspective, how do you see this entire stuff going on? I mean, for the last so many years, we have been all hearing the concept of poor quality colleges closing down in this country because they do not get a number of kids. Now that the concept of multidisciplinary degrees or dual degrees increases the number of offerings by these institutions, does it help them financially becoming more viable for them? How do you think, what type of commercial implication does it have on the university institutions?
Yeah, whether I'm not going to be touching on the commercial aspects, but I'm listening to the expression of views by Madam and yourself. I think only brings back to me memory of the education in the past. I think we all know. I think I'm not of that age, but then I didn't study at that time when these kind of combined classes were there. I've heard from my teachers where there will be specialization in a particular discipline, in a particular subject, in a particular institution, and the students from one college would go to the other college and get the expertise from there. I think this is coming back again, I think in a different avatar, I think in the new kind of education system that we are planning. And actually that is a welcome move, because what happens is that the expertise that is available in universities and colleges in specific areas are not harnessed maximum. So by these, I think you will be able to probably harness the best of expertise available in certain institutions, and you don't have to probably invest in that in your own institution because it's already available in X institution, and the Y has to go there or send the students over there. So this concept of this combined class clustering of students from different institutions to come to one institution to have that lecture or to have that practical or to have that exposure, I think is a welcoming move we are actually. And that again, besides sharing the knowledge, also brings in the element of collegiality, fellowship, and harmonious, working together. Today, I think we are all in islands. We are all in islands of education, and we are simply doing that. I think we are not looking into the aspect of harmonious and cogent, working together, even in the field of education. And therefore, I think this approach of, clustering institution in certain specific disciplines will also cut down on cost in institution which wanted to have that, because it's already available there. So that is something which I wanted to emphasize as a response to it. And in regard to the number of students who are going to be transforming to higher education from school education, I think if there are not that many colleges available to cater to the needs of the students who are coming from school, I think today we have very good modes, like, for example, the distance education, the online education. I think many students are now considering, while working, to take up these, programs from these modes, so that, the number of the gross enrollment ratio, I think overall, I think in a period of time with adopting all of this is likely to be definitely higher, benefiting particularly those classes of people who find hard to join the colleges, definitely because of the very high fees that they are going to be levying, and they can join these programs, I think at a much lower cost than what they will be paying in other institutions.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And I'm sure students are going to benefit from this. My next question to you, Leena ma'am, is, I was reading some of these reports and says that India's official unemployment rate is hovering around 7.5–8%. Obviously, that's not a farce. That's an official recorded data, which means that anybody who wants to have a job in India has the jobs. The problem is they do not have the type of wages that they want to do. People are underpaid, and somebody who wants to become an engineer has become an office clerk, for example. And obviously, India doesn't have much of a employment problem, but they have a jobs problem, but they have a wages problem in this country, which ultimately brings me to the concept of productivity of employees and the concept of skill deficits of our people. Do you think the concept of dual degrees will help students build up some complementary skill sets and improve opportunities for them when it comes to employment?
So I answered this partly in one of my responses, where I said that, if any program is not done well, then doing two programs will not, if one program is not done well, then doing two programs is not going to help you at all. So the focus of the education system has to be doing every program well. Whatever program an institution is offering, you have to do it well. And that costs effort. And, you have to pay attention to what is it that students have learned, reinforce their learning, sort of supplement the knowledge with competencies and skills and attitudes and so on. So it's not that, every person who has a degree can get a job. I mean, there are many things happening in parallel in India, that there are many employers who are complaining that we don't get the kind of people we are looking for. So they would prefer to actually not hire anybody than to hire somebody who doesn't suit them, actually. That said, we also have the other parts, which is, wage problem and all of that stuff. So if higher education is supposed to serve its purpose, the first thing it has to do is to improve the quality of its programs. And then, like I said, see, this dual program, it's not going to increase GER, right? I mean, the student is already in the higher education system and is taking a second program. So it's not solving the GER problem. In fact, a student taking two programs may block a place for a student, for another student to come in, may prevent increase of GER in some ways. So the dual program, to my mind, has limited use, especially at this stage of the Indian education system. That's not to say, and of course, we discussed how many constraints there are on doing online education and so on, but that's not to say that when capacity, high quality edtech becomes available, students will not leverage it. They will, but UGC has been, and for good reasons, very careful about who gets to offer online education and who gets to offer open and distance education. And therefore, the capacity to combine physical classes and online classes has not yet grown the way it could if there was confidence in the system. And we know very well that in India, the quality just drops very fast after, the top layer of institutions. So we have institutions that don't have enrollments because they have very poor reputation. And we have institutions where, there are 20 to 1, 50 to 1, 100 to 1 students applying for a place,
Yeah.
So there is the problem is the lack of quality capacity in the system. So GER officially maybe 27%, but maybe the quality GER is like under 10%, and that's where the pressure comes from.
I agree with you, ma'am. Students are tired of degrees which can't fetch them a job, as much as
Correct.
employers are tired of candidates who are not suitable for the open position that they have to offer.
Correct.
Dr. Jesudasan, my next question to you. For the students who are actually evaluating this type of opportunities, what type of combinations do you think are advisable to them? What will work better for them and open up more opportunities?
Once again, I think I would like to reiterate that it all depends upon the interest that the student is having. One should not be, construed by the fact that if someone has taken, a humanities program, has to consider the second program in humanities alone. It could be from sciences. So the interest that the student has in what they wanted to do, I think is something that needs to be, considered very well in choosing. And that's why I said, I think mentoring is very important. The mentor should be able to have a close walk with the student, understand the real interest that the person has besides the main program, and accordingly guide them so that, what they would be choosing would be a right combination that would enhance the primary program. So, for example, sometimes, nowadays, I think we already have what you call the triple major concept. You have got the political science, law, and psychology. You've got law, economics, political science combinations are there. I mean, this is, to have a flair or a taste of the other one. And because these packages appear to be good, in terms of a kind of a formal, all-round development in a particular area so that they'll be able to handle issues well. So I would largely underscore the fact that the interest that the person has, in what they have to choose, plus what the major discipline that they've taken is something that needs to be considered for choosing the second one.
Agree with you, sir, completely. And my last question to both of you. Ma'am, as you are aware that today the world of work, the world of organization and enterprises is facing a lot of uncertainty, driven by automation, machine learning, robotization, artificial intelligence, all put together. The future is unknown, unknowable. So employers, to make sure that the businesses are more resilient, are looking at multi-skilled employees, people who can be put to different roles. And in when it comes to calamities or pandemic or even normal times. Combinations like software with psychology and software with, for example, software engineer with creative sciences or creative arts are becoming very interesting combinations that employers are looking for. How do you think employers should read a student who is taken up two different degrees, maybe in a complementary stuff or in a place of interest, the way Dr. Jesudasan has spoken about? What do you think? How do you think that employers should read these students?
I think that employers should give credit for innovative studying also, right? I mean, innovative ways of building yourself up, your own strength up. So if you've done software and you've done psychology, or if you've done software and you've done the music, or, whatever, that is, those show an initiative and creativity that has to be valuable in an office space, That said, academia industry interaction in India is very, very low, actually. So academia has no clear understanding of what industry would like to see and how industry would like to read these kind of people and understand them. And industry, on the other hand, is not sort of handholding academia to build them to prepare them the kind of people that they are looking for. If that could be strengthened, if more, industry academia and interactions could be strengthened, then I think many of these programs will succeed, actually.
Thank you so much. How would you like to react to that, Dr. Jesudasan? How should employers read it? What are the different signals to them?
Yeah, I think I would probably view it through a different lens. I mean, it is not that the employer would look at productivity and what best, the person can work and probably enhance the capital of the, but then I think by looking at the candidate or the person who had done different types of programs, it once again depends upon how closely they are related to each other, how widely they are related to each other. But having done something on psychology, on music and things like that, would really probably bring into the organization an element of value-based living. the harmonious living. I think that is something very important. And he would probably the employer would be able to read from the person's mind, from the candidate's mind, what kind of things that the person has acquired along the way. What kind of combination, whether when hiring such a person, will I be able to have the stability in my organization rather than the productivity aspect. I think these are something that is very important. The value-based living is very important for the smooth, because what we find today is that many of the organizations, they crumble down due to various reasons. It could be union problem, this and that. So if someone is going to be looking at these values that have been taken alongside during the course of the journey of education, I think employers would probably go in for such combination, in the individual, so that the stability and the firmness of the institution, or the organization would be further strengthened by having such people hired in the organization. I think that is what I would say.
Thank you so much. I'm sure students will benefit from your vision and this great. Thank you so much, Leena ma'am. Thank you so much, Dr. Jesudasan, for joining me for today's discussion. I thoroughly enjoyed it and look forward to our next discussion sometime. Over to you, Jayashree.
We enjoyed it too, Shantanu. You've been a very good moderator. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I think Shantanu Rouge, I think it was very nice. And also to hear from Madam Leena, I think has been really very enriching. And we not only shared, but we also learned, we also picked up points from our discussions. And that is the takeaway for, I think, both of us from this.
Thank you so much. Both of you are very kind. Over to you, Jayashree.
It's quite insightful and intense discussion. Before concluding the webinar, let me sum up discussion points which were thoughtfully put across by you all. To begin, dual degree programs enable students to learn two entirely different fields simultaneously, increasing one's scope of knowledge and skill set. This better prepares them for a career in either field or an opportunity to apply both sets of experience into a particular area. Second benefit comes in the form of competitive advantage and marketability. Many employers are prone to hiring candidates who have a wide range of knowledge and skills that can be applied to various functions within an organization. Flipping the coin and looking at the opposite side, the discussion helped us to understand some evident challenges when pursuing a dual degree. So it was very well listed out by both the panelists: lack of quality and efficiency in the system, completion of courses on time, administrative issues, commitment by the institutions and students in terms of delivering and pursuing of courses. On behalf of everyone here today, I would like to thank our moderator, Mr. Shantanu Rouge, and panelists, Mr. Alexander Jesudasan and Dr. Leena Wadia, for taking the time to moderate and speak to us today on the very important topic on dual degrees. Thank you so much. Looking forward to meeting you all in the near future in the forum again.